You can stay for dinner, but please don't mention what you do. Just say you're retired." Vanessa's voice was light, almost playful, but her eyes were steel. She stood there in her champagne-colored dress, one hand on my son's shoulder, the other adjusting the collar of his Brooks Brothers suit. We were in the private dining room of Greystone Club, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Boston Harbor, crystal chandeliers throwing light across mahogany tables. 50 guests milled around with cocktails, the kind of people whose watches cost more than my truck. I looked at Mike. My son, the boy I'd raised alone since he was 12. He was staring at his shoes, the same way he used to when he'd broken something and didn't want to admit it. "Dad understands," he said quietly. "Right, Dad?" I nodded slowly. I was wearing khakis and a button-down shirt, clean but worn, with sawdust still caught in the seams. I hadn't noticed. I'd come straight from the shop because Mike said 6 o'clock casual family dinner to celebrate his promotion. Vice President of Operations at Whitmore Chen Technologies. I was proud. 20 years I'd worked to give him opportunities I never had. "Sure," I said. "I understand." Vanessa smiled, relieved. She touched my arm lightly. "It's not that we're not proud of you, Bob. It's just that tonight is about Mike's future. The board members are here. Investors. You know how it is." I didn't know how it was, but I nodded anyway. "My name is Robert Castellano. Everyone calls me Bob. I'm 62 years old, and I've been a carpenter since I was 16. My father came from Sicily with nothing but his hands and a belief that if you worked hard enough, built things solid enough, America would give you a life. He was right, mostly. I built a small business making custom furniture, kitchen cabinets, anything that required measuring twice and cutting once. It wasn't glamorous. My hands are scarred, knuckles thick, fingers that don't quite straighten anymore. But those hands put food on the table. They put Mike through college. I met Marie at a church social when I was 23. She was a teacher's aide, daughter of a mechanic. We understood each other. Work hard. Love your family. Don't ask for more than you earn. We had Mike 2 years later. She used to run her fingers over my rough palms and say, "These are honest hands, Bobby. Don't you ever forget it." She died when Mike was 12. Breast cancer. Fast and cruel. The last thing she said to me was, "Make sure he knows where he comes from. Don't let success make him forget who he is." I promised her. I kept that promise for 20 years. I worked 6 days a week. I saved every extra dollar. When Mike got into Boston College, I paid. When he wanted to study abroad junior year, I paid. When he decided to get his MBA at Wharton, I paid. I never told him how many nights I worked, how many jobs I took that hurt my back, how many times I ate cereal for dinner so he could have everything he needed. He graduated top of his class, got recruited by Whitmore Chen, a tech company started by Vanessa's father and his partner. Within 3 years, Mike was running operations. Last month, they made him VP. 29 years old, the youngest VP in company history. I was proud. I thought tonight would be the night I finally relaxed, saw the fruits of all those years. Instead, I was standing in the corner of this gilded room, holding a glass of water, being told not to mention I was a carpenter. The dinner began. I found my seat at table 7, near the back by the service door. The centerpiece was white orchids, probably cost more than I charged for a dining table. Next to me was an elderly couple, the Hendersons, who nodded politely and then talked between themselves. Across from me was a young guy in a suit who introduced himself as Bryce from acquisitions and then ignored me the rest of the night. At the front table sat Mike, Vanessa, her parents, and several board members. Vanessa's father, Charles Whitmore, was old Boston money. His great-grandfather had owned textile mills. Now the family invested in tech startups and sat on nonprofit boards. Her mother, Patricia, wore pearls that caught the light every time she moved her head. The first course arrived, some kind of soup with a foam on top. I ate quietly, watching my son laugh at something Charles said. Mike looked comfortable there, natural, like he'd been born into rooms like this instead of our 3-bedroom house in Medford. Halfway through the meal, Charles stood to give a toast. The room went quiet. Tonight, we celebrate not just Michael's promotion, but the future of Whitmore Chen Technologies, he began. His voice carried that particular accent, the kind that came from boarding schools and summer houses on the Cape. When Michael joined us 5 years ago, I saw something special. Intelligence, yes, but more importantly, ambition. The understanding that success requires not just hard work, but vision. The ability to see beyond where you started and imagine where you can go. People murmured approval. Mike smiled, modest but pleased. Michael represents the best of what this company can be, Charles continued. He came to us ready to learn, to grow, to become part of something bigger than himself. And Vanessa, my daughter, saw that potential. Together, they're building not just a career, but a legacy. Applause filled the room. I clapped too, but my hands felt heavy. Not once did Charles mention where Mike actually started. Not once did anyone at that table acknowledge that the boy being celebrated had grown up in a house where we worried about heating bills, where college wasn't guaranteed, where success came from my sweat and Marie's prayers. After dinner, I went out to the terrace for air. The harbor stretched black beyond the lights, boats bobbing at their moorings. I could see my reflection in the glass door, an old man in cheap clothes, out of place. Mr. Castellano? I turned. Patricia Whitmore stood there, drink in hand, expression somewhere between polite and pitying. "Are you enjoying the evening?" she asked. "It's very nice," I said. "You did a wonderful job." "Thank you. We wanted everything to be perfect for Michael." She paused, sipping her martini. "You must be very proud of him." "I am. He's come such a long way." Another pause. "Vanessa mentioned that you're in construction? Carpentry? Custom furniture mostly. How interesting." The way she said interesting meant boring. That must be very different from Michael's world now. "I suppose it is." She smiled, the kind of smile that didn't reach the eyes. "Well, I'm sure you're just happy to see him doing so well. That's all any parent wants, isn't it? For their children to do better than they did." The implication hung in the air. Mike had done better. Better than me. Better than my world of sawdust and measuring tapes. "Ma'am," I said quietly, "Mike is doing well because someone taught him how to work, how to measure carefully and build something solid. Those lessons don't go away just because the building changed." Patricia blinked, surprised I'd said anything at all. Then she laughed lightly. "Of course. Well, enjoy the rest of your evening, Mr. Castellano." She went back inside. I stayed on the terrace, gripping the railing. My hands, rough and scarred, looked like they belonged to someone else in this place. Inside, I heard music starting, dancing. I went back in, thinking maybe I'd say goodnight to Mike, head home early. I found him by the bar with Vanessa and several of her friends. They were laughing, red-faced from wine. "Dad," Mike said when he saw me. His smile faltered slightly. "Having a good time?" "It's getting late," I said. "I should probably head out. Long drive back to Medford." "Oh, you don't have to rush off," Vanessa said, but her eyes said something different. One of her friends, a woman with a severe haircut, looked at me curiously. "I don't think we've met. I'm Stephanie. How do you know Michael?" Before I could answer, Vanessa jumped in. "This is Bob, an old family friend. Not father, not Mike's dad. An old family friend." Mike didn't correct her. The words stuck in my throat. I looked at my son, waiting. Surely he would say something. Surely after everything, after 20 years of sacrifice, he wouldn't let this stand. But Mike just smiled awkwardly and changed the subject. "Hey, Dad, did you try the salmon? It's really good." That's when I knew. This wasn't about tonight. This was about who Mike had decided to become. Someone who fit in rooms like this. Someone whose father was just an old family friend who worked with his hands. I excused myself and went to the bathroom, locked the stall door, stood there, breathing slowly, trying to calm the rage in my chest. Not rage at them, rage at myself for not seeing it sooner, for thinking that paying for everything would be enough, for believing that love and sacrifice would matter more than image. I heard Marie's voice, clear as if she were standing next to me. "When he forgets gratitude, don't be angry. Let life teach him what you couldn't." I washed my face, dried it with paper towels, looked at myself in the mirror. The face looking back had aged 10 years tonight. I went back out, found Vanessa alone, checking her phone. "Vanessa," I said, "I'm going to leave now." She looked up, relieved. "Of course. Thanks so much for coming, Bob. It meant a lot to Michael. Before I go, can I ask you something?" "Sure. Why are you ashamed of me?" Her face froze. "I'm not. You told me not to mention what I do. You told people I'm an old family friend. You sat me at the back table. So I'm asking, why are you ashamed of me?" "Bob, this isn't the time." "When is the time? When will it be appropriate for Mike's father to exist in his new life?" Her expression hardened. The polite mask fell away. "You want honesty? Fine. Tonight is important. The board is watching. Investors are watching. First impressions matter in this world. And I'm sorry, but a carpenter from Medford doesn't exactly fit the image we're trying to build." "The image?" "Yes. Michael is a VP now. He needs to be taken seriously. That means everything about him needs to project success. His wife, his home, his background. All of it." "His background," I repeated. "You mean me?" "I mean the past. I'm not saying you're a bad person, Bob. But can you understand that sometimes we need to leave certain things behind to move forward?" I looked at her for a long moment. This girl who'd never worked a day in her life, who'd inherited her job from her father, who looked at my hands like they were dirty. "Where's Mike?" I asked. "Talking to the CFO." "Why?" "I need to speak with him, privately." She sighed. "Bob, please don't make a scene. He's been worried all night that you'd feel out of place. Just go home. We'll do dinner next week, somewhere more casual. Get him. Now." Something in my tone made her comply. She went and got Mike, whispered something to him. He came over, concerned. "Dad, what's wrong? Can we talk? Outside?" We went back to the terrace. The party continued inside, laughter and music bleeding through the glass. "Is everything okay?" Mike asked. "No," I said. "Everything is not okay." He sighed, rubbing his face. "Look, I know tonight's been weird. I should have warned you about the dress code. This isn't about clothes, Michael. This is about you letting your wife call me an old family friend. About sitting me at the back of the room like I'm an embarrassment. About being ashamed of where you came from. I'm not ashamed. Then why didn't you correct her? When she said, I was just a friend, why didn't you say I'm your father?" He was quiet. "Answer me." "Because," he said finally, "it's complicated. Vanessa's family, they have certain expectations. Her father's the CEO. Her mother sits on boards. If I'm going to succeed here, I need to fit in. And I don't fit. You don't understand this world, Dad. It's not just about doing good work. It's about perception, image, who you know, how you present yourself. So I'm supposed to disappear? Pretend I don't exist? No. I just need you to understand that things are different now. I've worked hard to get here. I can't have anything jeopardizing that." The words hit like hammers. I've worked hard. As if he'd done it alone. As if 20 years of my life hadn't gone into building his success. "Michael," I said quietly, "do you remember how you paid for college?" He blinked. "What? College?" "Wharton. The study abroad program in London. The apartment in Philadelphia. How did you pay for those things?" "I had scholarships. Student loans. I worked part-time." "You had partial scholarships. You worked part-time at the library making $12 an hour. That covered your books, maybe. Do you know what Wharton costs?" He shifted uncomfortably. "I don't know, Dad." "I didn't think about it. You said you'd take care of it." "I did take care of it. I took out loans. I worked 7 days a week. I sold the house your mother and I bought together and moved into a 2-room apartment so I could afford the down payment on your Philadelphia place. I didn't take a vacation for 12 years. I wore the same 3 shirts. I ate pasta 5 nights a week. Do you know why?" Mike's face had gone white. "Because I wanted you to have opportunities I never had. Because I wanted you to build something bigger than furniture. Because I loved you enough to give you everything." "Dad, but you know what I didn't want? I didn't want you to forget where you came from. I didn't want you to be ashamed of the hands that fed you. I'm not ashamed. You let your wife call me a family friend. You sat me in the back of the room. You didn't mention me once in your speech, because I didn't want people to judge me. The truth finally came out, hung between us like smoke. Judge you, I repeated softly. For having a carpenter as a father. Mike looked away. This world, Dad, it's cutthroat. People look at where you're from, Vanessa's family. They're old money. They have standards. If I'm going to lead this company someday, I need people to respect me. And they won't respect you if they know I exist. He didn't answer. Didn't need to. I took out my phone. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. Who are you calling? Mike asked. Someone who will help you understand the value of honesty. I dialed Richard Pemberton, my lawyer. The one who'd helped me structure Mike's education funding. The one who'd drawn up the papers Mike never read carefully. Richard, I said when he answered. I need you to activate Clause 7 on the Castellano Education Trust. Mike frowned. What trust? The one I set up when you were 18, I said. The one you signed when you accepted the money for college. Richard's voice was cautious. Bob, that's the full repayment clause. Are you sure? I'm sure. That's $347,000, plus interest, total of $412,000. Mike's eyes went wide. What? I want the demand letter sent tonight. Full repayment within 30 days, as specified in the contract. Dad, wait. Also pull the documentation on the investment I made in Whitmore Chen 4 years ago. The seed money for the operations expansion. I want to review my options as a minority shareholder. Mike grabbed my arm. What are you talking about? I hung up, looked at my son. 4 years ago, when Whitmore Chen needed capital to expand into healthcare tech, I invested. I sold my business, my equipment, everything I'd built, $250,000. I did it anonymously through an LLC because you asked me to. You said it would be easier if people didn't know. You said that was a loan. I said it was support. You assumed it was a loan. I never corrected you because I wanted you to succeed. But that money bought me 8% equity in this company. I'm on the shareholder registry. I have voting rights. I have a seat at every board meeting if I want it. The color drained from his face completely now. So let me make this simple, I continued. You have 30 days to repay the education loans, $412,000. If you default, the terms specify I can garnish your wages and liquidate your assets. And as a minority shareholder in Whitmore Chen, I can call a vote to review your promotion. I can request financial audits. I can make your life very, very difficult. Dad, you can't. Or, I said quietly, you can explain to your wife and her family exactly who I am. You can tell them that the carpenter from Medford is the reason you got your degree, the reason this company had the capital to expand, the reason you're standing here in a suit that costs more than I make in a month. Vanessa appeared at the terrace door. Is everything okay? People are asking for you, Michael. I turned to her. Did you know your husband owes me over $400,000? Her face went slack. What? Didn't think so. I put my phone in my pocket. You two have a good night. Enjoy the party. I'll see myself out. I walked through the dining room. Heads turned. Whispers started. Someone had clearly overheard something. I didn't care. I walked out of Greystone Club, into the parking lot, to my old truck, with its rusted wheel wells and duct-taped seat. I sat there for a long time, hands on the steering wheel, those scarred, rough hands that had built everything my son had become. And I drove home to my empty apartment in Medford, where Marie's photo still sat on the nightstand, and her voice still whispered the same words. Let life teach him what you couldn't. The lesson had begun. The next morning, I woke to my phone buzzing like a trapped wasp. 17 missed calls, all from Mike. I ignored them, made coffee, sat at my small kitchen table watching light creep through the window. The table was one I'd built 30 years ago. Maple, hand-rubbed finish. Joints so tight you couldn't slide paper between them. Marie had wanted something that would last. Something we can pass down, she'd said. Now it was mine alone, in an apartment half the size of the home I'd sold to pay for Mike's dreams. The phone rang again. This time I answered. Dad, please, Mike's voice was ragged. We need to talk. We talked last night. I need to explain. Explain what? That you're ashamed of me? I think that was clear. The board is asking questions. Vanessa's father wants to know about the shareholder registry. Dad, you're destroying my career. No, Michael. I'm showing you what it's built on. Silence on the other end. Then, how much do you want? What? To go away. To not make this public. How much? I laughed. But there was no humor in it. You think this is about money? Isn't it? You want me to pay back the loans? Fine. We can set up a payment plan. Just don't destroy everything I've worked for. Everything you've worked for, I repeated. Tell me, son, when you look at your VP title, do you see the nights I worked until midnight finishing cabinets? When you walk into your corner office, do you think about me eating cereal for dinner so you could eat in the dining hall? When you shake hands with investors, do you notice your hands are soft because mine are rough? That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? I gave you everything. I asked for nothing. Not gratitude, not recognition. Just that you remember where you came from. And last night you told a room full of people I was nobody. An old family friend. So yes, Michael, now there's a price. But it's not money. Then what? I want you to tell them the truth. All of them. Vanessa, her family, the board. I want you to stand up and say your father is a carpenter from Medford who built your life with his own hands. I want you to stop pretending you came from nothing and became something. You came from everything I had. More silence. Then, quietly, I can't do that. Why not? Because they'll never see me the same way. I'll always be the carpenter's son, the kid from Medford. I'll never be taken seriously. Then you have your answer, I said. You can keep your image, or you can keep your integrity. But you can't have both. I hung up. Over the next few days, things moved fast. Richard sent the formal demand letter, $412,000, due in 30 days. Mike tried calling. Vanessa tried calling. I didn't answer. Then Charles Whitmore called. Mr. Castellano. His voice was cold, controlled. I think we need to discuss this situation like reasonable men. What situation is that? This absurd demand for payment. Michael is an employee of my company. You're disrupting his ability to work. I'm prepared to negotiate a settlement. There's nothing to negotiate. Your son-in-law signed a contract. I'm enforcing it. Do you understand what you're doing? Michael has a promising career, a future. You're his father. How can you jeopardize that? I'm not jeopardizing anything. I'm teaching him what a promise means, what a signature means, what family means. This is extortion. This is contract law. Take it up with a judge if you'd like. I have excellent documentation. Charles was quiet for a moment. Then, what will it take for this to go away? It's not going away. Your son-in-law has 30 days to pay what he owes. If he can't, we'll proceed with wage garnishment and asset seizure as outlined in the contract. You bankrupt your own son. He's already bankrupt, where it counts. I hung up on him too. By the end of the week, word had spread. These things always do in Boston's business circles. Someone at the party had recorded part of our conversation on the terrace. It was all over LinkedIn, Reddit, Twitter. VP's Carpenter father demands $400K in loan repayment after being snubbed at promotion. The comment section was brutal. Half the people sided with me. Good for him. These entitled kids need to learn. Respect your parents. The other half called me vindictive. He's destroying his son's career. This is financial. A real father wouldn't do this. I didn't leave him something, but Mike did. He showed up at my apartment on day 1. He looked terrible, unshaven, eyes red, suit purple. Can I come in? I stepped aside. He walked into my small living room, looked around like he was seeing it for the first time. The furniture I used, the photos of me, the worn carpet and outdated television. This is where you live? This is where I've lived for 12 years, since I sold the house. He sat heavily on the couch, put his head in his hands. I can't pay, he said finally. I don't have $400,000. My salary's good, but we've spent it. The house in Cambridge cost me. Vanessa's car, the wedding. I have maybe $30,000 in savings. Then you shouldn't have signed a contract. But I was 18. I didn't understand. You understood enough to about replacing me. My career is over, Dad. Are you happy now? I sat down across from him. Do I look happy to you? Then why are you doing this? Because 20 years ago, your mother made me promise that if you ever forgot where you came from, I'd remind you. I thought love would be enough. I thought giving you everything would be enough. But last night you showed me it wasn't. You were willing to erase me to fit into a world that doesn't care about me. So yes, I'm reminded. The heart. Tears ran down his face. Sorry, he doesn't pay debt. I don't know what to do. I looked at this man who used to be my boy. He used to sit in my shop while I worked, asking questions about measurements and wood grain. He used to be proud to tell people his dad built things. I'll tell you what you're gonna do, I said quietly. You're gonna tell Vanessa's family. Every dollar I gave, every sacrifice I made. You're gonna stop pretending you're self-made. And you're going to decide if you want to be a man they respect for pretending, or a man I respect for being honest. And if I do that, the debt, we'll work something out. Not forgiveness. You don't deserve that yet. But we'll work something out. He wiped his eyes, nodded slowly. There's one more thing, I said. What? I'm calling that board meeting, as a shareholder, and you're going to tell them everything, on record, in front of her father, in front of everyone. Dad, that'll ruin me. Maybe. Or maybe it'll save you. The board meeting was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Mike spent those 2 weeks looking like a ghost. Vanessa stopped calling me entirely. Charles tried one more time to negotiate. I refused. The meeting was in the Whitmore Chen conference room, 23rd floor, glass walls, overlooking Boston. 15 board members. Charles at the head of the table. Vanessa sitting in as company counsel. And me, in a suit I'd bought 20 years ago for Marie's funeral, sitting in the shareholder section. Charles opened the meeting with a cold stare in my direction. We have an unusual situation today. Mr. Castellano has invoked his rights as a minority shareholder to address the board regarding personnel decisions. This is highly irregular, but legally within his rights. Mr. Castellano, you have 10 minutes. I stood. Every eye in the room was on me. Thank you. I'm not here to waste your time. I'm here because my son, Michael, is being considered for VP of Operations. Before you confirm that position, I think you should know who he really is. Mike's face was white as paper. I'm a carpenter. I've worked with my hands for 45 years. I raised Michael alone after my wife died. I paid for every year of his education, Boston College, Wharton, study abroad, everything, $347,000 in total. I did this by working 7 days a week, by selling my home, by sacrificing every comfort. The board members shifted uncomfortably. 4 years ago, when this company needed capital to expand, I invested my life savings, $250,000. I did it because Michael asked me to, because I believed in him. I did it anonymously because he asked me to, because he said it would be easier that way. Charles's jaw tightened. Last week, at a party celebrating Michael's promotion, I was asked not to mention what I do for a living. I was introduced as an old family friend. I was seated at the back of the room, and when I asked my son why, he told me that people in this world won't respect him if they know he came from a carpenter. You could hear breathing in the silence. I'm not telling you this to humiliate him. I'm telling you because you should know who you're promoting. Not the image he presents, not the family he married into, but who he actually is. Someone who forgot gratitude. Someone who was willing to erase his own father to fit in. I looked at Mike. He was crying openly now. Michael, I said, you have something to say to these people? He stood slowly, wiped his face. His voice shook. Everything my father said is true. I let my wife tell people he was a family friend. I was ashamed, not of him, of myself, because I knew where I came from. I knew every dollar, every sacrifice. And instead of being proud of it, I hid it. I wanted people to think I'd done it myself, that I was self-made. But I'm not. Everything I am is because of him. Vanessa was staring at the table. I signed a contract with my father, a loan agreement for my education. I didn't read it carefully. I assumed it was just paperwork. When he asked me to pay it back, I offered him money to go away, like he was a problem to be solved, instead of the reason I'm here. Charles's face was stone. I don't deserve this promotion, Mike said. I don't deserve any of it. I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry for all of it. The room was silent for a long time. Then one of the board members, an older woman named Dr. Helen Park, spoke up. Mr. Whitmore, if I may. Charles nodded stiffly. I came from nothing, too, Dr. Park said. My parents were Korean immigrants who ran a dry cleaning business in Queens. I worked in that store from the time I was 8 years old. When I applied to medical school, my mother gave me an envelope. Inside was every dollar she'd saved for 20 years. $15,000. She said, "Don't be ashamed of where this came from." She looked at Mike. I've been ashamed. We all have. When you come from modest beginnings and achieve success, there's pressure to pretend you did it alone, to erase the sacrifices of people who loved you. But Mr. Castellano is right. That's not strength. That's cowardice. Another board member spoke up, then another, each sharing their own stories. Immigrant parents, working-class backgrounds, the people who sacrificed. Charles sat frozen. Vanessa was crying now, too. Finally, Charles spoke. Michael, I'd like you to step out. We need to discuss this. Mike and I both left. We stood in the hallway, not speaking. After 30 minutes, we were called back in. Charles's face was unreadable. Michael, the board has voted. We're moving forward with your promotion. On one condition. Mike exhaled. You will publicly acknowledge your father's role in your success. In writing, in speeches, in every biography. No more hiding, no more shame, and you will establish a scholarship fund in your mother's name for students from working-class families, funded by a percentage of your salary. Non-negotiable. Mike nodded. Yes, absolutely. Charles turned to me. Mr. Castellano, the board would like to formally recognize your investment in this company. We'd like to offer you a seat on our advisory council, not as a favor to Michael, but because you've clearly demonstrated the kind of judgment and character we need. I looked at him for a long moment. I appreciate that, but I'm a carpenter, not a businessman. I'll keep my shares, but I'll let you run the company. And the debt? Charles asked. I looked at Mike. We'll work it out. Between family. After the meeting, Mike and I went to a diner in Somerville. The kind of place with vinyl booths and coffee in thick mugs. We sat across from each other, not speaking at first. I really messed up, didn't I? He said finally. Yeah. How do I fix it? You start by being honest. With Vanessa, with yourself, with everyone. She's really angry. She should be. You lied to her too. He nodded slowly. Dad, when did you know that I was ashamed of you? I thought about it. Probably a year ago. You stopped inviting me to things. Stopped talking about me at work. When I asked how you were doing, you'd change the subject. I told myself it was because you were busy, but I knew. Why didn't you say something? Because I hoped you'd figure it out yourself. But you didn't. You just got deeper into the lie. We drank our coffee in silence. What happens now? He asked. Now you pay me back. Not all at once, but regularly. Every month. Like a real debt. How much? $5,000 a month. It'll take you years. That's the point. And we can. We can still be father and son. I looked at this man who'd been my whole world for 30 years. We never stopped. You just forgot for a while. Over the next 6 months, things changed slowly. Mike paid the debt faithfully. $5,000 a month. No excuses. No delays. He also started coming by the shop on weekends. Said he wanted to learn woodworking. I taught him. Vanessa came too, eventually. Apologized. Said she'd never understood what her privilege had cost other people. She started volunteering at a community center in Mattapan, teaching kids about career paths. Said she wanted to do better. Mike gave a speech at the company's annual meeting, told the whole story, introduced me from the stage, called me up. The applause was long and genuine. He also established the Marie Castellano Scholarship Fund, full-ride scholarships for students whose parents worked in trades. First year, they gave out 5 scholarships. Mike cried when he handed out the first one. One Saturday, while we were in the shop together, Mike fitting a dovetail joint. He stopped and looked at me. Dad, I understand now. What you did. Why you did it. I looked up from the chair I was repairing. Yeah? You weren't punishing me. You were teaching me. Took you long enough. He laughed, but his eyes were serious. Mom would be proud of you. She'd be proud of you too. Now. Not 3 months ago, but now. We worked in silence for a while. The smell of wood shavings and varnish filling the air. Dad, he said again. Yeah? Thank you for not giving up on me. I put down my tools, walked over, put my scarred, rough hand on his shoulder. I'm your father. Giving up was never an option. 2 years later, Mike and Vanessa had a baby. A girl. They named her Marie. I held her in the hospital. This tiny thing with my wife's name. And I saw the whole cycle of life in her face. The sacrifices, the lessons, the love that builds across generations. She's going to know her grandfather, Mike said. No hiding, no shame. She's going to know that the hands that built her father's life are the same hands that will build her future. I looked at my son, at his wife, at this baby who carried Marie's name. You know what your mother used to say? I asked. What? She said, the strongest thing you can build isn't made of wood or stone. It's made of honesty and gratitude. Those are the only things that last. Mike nodded. Vanessa was crying. I spent 45 years building furniture, I continued. But the best thing I ever built was you, even if I had to tear you down first to remind you what you were made of. Little Marie grabbed my finger with her tiny hand. Her grip was surprisingly strong. This hand built a lot of things, I told her. Cabinets and chairs and tables. But mostly it built love. And someday, when you're old enough to understand, I'll teach you that love isn't pretty words. It's rough hands and hard lessons and never giving up, even when it hurts. I looked at Mike. He was smiling through tears. Your father knows that now, I said. He learned it the hard way. But he learned it, and that's all that matters. Outside the hospital window, Boston sprawled in afternoon light. Somewhere in that city was my small shop, my modest apartment, my simple life. But here, in this room, holding this baby who carried my wife's name, I had everything that mattered. I had my son back. Not the image he'd tried to become, but the man he'd always been underneath. The man Marie and I had raised. The man who finally understood that success isn't measured by titles or money, but by gratitude and grace. The lesson was learned. The circle was complete. And these rough, scarred hands that had built so much could finally rest, knowing they'd built the one thing that would outlast everything else. A man who knew where he came from and was no longer afraid to tell the truth. Before I go, I want to say this. I don't regret what I did. Some people called me harsh, said a real father wouldn't humiliate his son publicly. Maybe they're right. Maybe I went too far. But I watched my son erase me, pretend I didn't exist, and I had to make a choice. Let him live a lie, or force him to face the truth. I chose truth. Because at the end of the day, you can build a career on lies. You can build relationships on image. But you can't build a life on anything except honesty. Marie knew that. She lived it every day. And when she asked me to make sure Mike never forgot where he came from, she wasn't asking me to be his friend. She was asking me to be his father. Being a father means teaching hard lessons. It means enforcing consequences. It means loving someone enough to let them fail, to let them hurt, to let them learn. I gave Mike everything. My money, my time, my life. But the greatest gift I gave him was letting him understand the cost of forgetting gratitude. These hands built furniture for 45 years. They're not pretty. They're scarred and rough, and they hurt in the cold. But they built something that will last longer than any chair or table. They built a man who knows his worth, who knows his history, who will teach his daughter the same lessons. And that's enough. That's more than enough.